What are my expectations for the Utah Jazz? Let's get into this. Quickly before we get the video started, if you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more NBA content just like this one, hit that subscribe button and that post notification bell. Anyways, back to the video. The Utah Jazz have built something special over the years. They were able to bring in an absolute superstar in Donavan Mitchel and a legitimate all-star type player in Rudy Gobert. And besides their main two players on their roster, they were also able to fill out the rest of their roster in terms of their starting lineup and also their bench unit to really give a ton of help to these two stars they have on their team. And to cap off all the talent they have on this Jazz roster, they were also able to bring in a fantastic head coach in Quinn Snyder a few seasons back. And overall, if I had to describe this Utah Jazz team, I would say 1, they're extremely well coached. You can tell that on the offensive side as well as the defensive side, as well as how they execute in clutch situations. But also, you just have to say this Jazz team has just been a very, very good basketball team and a very difficult basketball team to play against. What they were able to build over the past few years in Utah has just been special. Although this previous season wasn't necessarily a success for them and they didn't do what they would have liked to do in terms of winning an NBA championship last season, I still think last season was somewhat of a successful season in the sense that they were building on what they did the previous season. So based on that, what can we actually expect from this Utah Jazz team going into this year? So I think this kind of goes without saying, but when you talk about the Utah Jazz and what I expect for them going into this next season, I expect them to play hard each and every night, both on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, no matter how many injuries they're going through and no matter what team they're playing. Over the past few years, the Utah Jazz have built their brand in terms of a team that's always going to play extremely hard no matter what happens, and I expect that to continue throughout this next season as well. In terms of specific players, of course I'm expecting Donavan Mitchel to be better than he was last season, and last season he was fantastic. But basically the thing about Donavan Mitchel and what makes him so special in this league is he's literally getting better each and every season, so I would expect that trend to continue this next season. Also, a guy like Rudy Gobert, I would expect him to get better, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Last year he was definitely working on some things in terms of his post ability and just some other things he can do on the offensive side of the ball. I would expect him to continue to work on those things and be a little bit better this year at those things than he was last year. And of course, we all know what he can do on the defensive side of the ball. He's one of the best defensive centers we have in the NBA, maybe the best defensive center. But looking around the roster, talking about some other players, we'll see what happens with Jared Butler. He's a rookie that they brought in this season, and maybe he can turn out to be something pretty special. The track record of the Utah Jazz, especially in recent memory, has always been a team that can draft extremely well. When you look at the guys they were able to get, Donavan Mitchel, he was not a top 5 pick. Rudy Gobert, clearly not a top 5 pick. He was in the late 20s. So no matter really where they draft in the first round, I honestly have confidence whoever the Jazz draft, that player at the very least would probably turn into a good rotational piece. But other players on their roster, of course Joe Ingles, I think we know what he can do at this point in his career. He could definitely play make for himself. He's a great 3-point shooter, catch and shoot, can create his own shot, driving all the way to the basket. It's just very crafty overall. Also a guy like Bogdanovich, he's also fantastic, can create his own shot, amazing shooter, has a very good pull-up mid-range jump shot, post turnaround fadeaway, just a very good player overall. Also Jordan Clarkson, just coming off the 6th Man of the Year award last year, I think he's going to continuously get better as well, and I think he's going to be a legitimate Lou Williams type player going down the line, where he's just going to be a fantastic player coming off the bench for them. And when it comes down to late game situations in the 4th quarter, you're probably going to want a guy like Jordan Clarkson on the court rather than not. So I think he's another guy that's probably going to improve this season compared to last. And overall, when you look at the whole team collectively, I think in terms of the talent they have this year, I think it should be a lot better than it was last year, and last year it was fantastic. But now actually talking about my expectations in terms of what seed the Jazz should be this season, I would probably say they should be a top 5 seed in the Western Conference. Now you may ask, before in the video I said I think this Jazz team is going to be a lot more talented this season than they were last, just based on all the players that they have on the roster just getting better each and every season, along with bringing in some nice talented rookies they did this previous season. So why would I expect the Jazz, who were last year a top 3 seed in the Western Conference, to fall down to maybe a top 5 in the Western Conference this year? Well, the reason I'm saying that is because I think the Western Conference has gotten a lot better this year than it was last year. Just talking about one team in specific, you look at the Los Angeles Lakers. They were the 8th seed last year in the Western Conference. Even if they did nothing, I wouldn't expect the Lakers to be that low once again. I think last year they just got hit with the injury bug, and that was basically the reason why they were so low in the standings. But also on top of that, you look at all the players that the Lakers were able to bring in this previous offseason. Of course, Russell Westbrook was the main piece, forming forming a big three with him, LeBron, and Anthony Davis, but also all the complementary pieces they added to the starting lineup, but also to the bench unit, just making that Lakers team an absolute juggernaut going forward. So we'd expect a team like the Lakers, who were the 8th seed last year, to probably be a top 3 seed this year at the very least, maybe a top 2 seed, maybe the top seed in the Western Conference. So that's just one team that would make it harder for the Jazz to become a top 3 seed once again. But you look at other teams around the NBA, there's teams all around you that gotten a lot better. So even if, let's just say for the sake of the video, that the Jazz do end up being maybe a 4th, maybe even a 5th seed in the Western Conference, even if that does happen, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a failure or a disappointment for them, because they could be playing great basketball, but just due to the fact that everybody around them has gotten a lot better, they would fall to the 4th or 5th seed. But really what matters for the Utah Jazz is the playoffs. This previous year, they definitely had a pretty good first round where they made it, and then in the second round, a lot of people thought they would beat the Los Angeles Clippers, especially due to the fact that the Clippers didn't even have Kawhi Leonard, who was recently injured at that point. But unfortunately for them, they kind of blew it and they lost to the Clippers, which is definitely a disappointment. But what I'm looking for this year and what I'm expecting from the Jazz is, of course, they must win their first round series, whoever they're playing. But going into that second round series, depending on who they're playing, I would probably expect them to win that series as well and make it to that third series and see what they can do from there. Maybe they can win that and surprise the Los Angeles Lakers if that does turn out to be the team they do face at that point, and then maybe even go all the way to the NBA Finals. I think this Jazz team is certainly very underrated, and not a lot of people think they can make it out of the Western Conference, but in my opinion, I think they definitely have the talent to do so. And I'm certainly not expecting them to make it out of the Western Conference, I just think they have the talent to do so, and I wouldn't necessarily be completely shocked if it were to be the case. But of course it is going to be extremely difficult, especially considering the fact that they play in a tough Western Conference in general, but also in a Western Conference that has the Los Angeles Lakers in it with their super team. But overall, I think what the Jazz have proven over the years is not only are they going to be a very good team during the regular season and certainly make the playoffs basically each and every season, but they're also going to be an extremely fun team to watch. Whenever you have a collective unit of just young players that want to get better, want to win, and just get better each and every season, a team like that is always extremely fun to watch. And especially when they're playing the right way, both on the offensive side, but also on the defensive side, where everybody truly buys into what the coach is selling. And when you look at the Utah Jazz, there's certainly a team that has completely bought into what Quinn Snyder is selling to them. And overall, this Utah team is just going to be an extremely fun team to watch, basically each and every game. But just to reiterate the expectations I have for the Jazz, in terms of their seeding, I would expect them to at the very least be a top 5 seed in the Western Conference, but where it really matters is the playoffs, and I would definitely expect the Jazz to win their first round playoff matchup, and then going into their second round matchup, I would also expect them to win. Of course, it does depend who they play. Maybe they play an absolute super team, maybe somehow they get matched up with the Lakers in the second round, but barring anything crazy, I would expect the Jazz to win their second round series, and I would expect them to be very competitive in their third series, whoever they're playing, even if they're playing the Lakers, and maybe they can even shock a team like the Lakers and make it all the way to the Western Conference Final. And maybe they can even shock a team like the Lakers and make it all the way to the NBA Finals. And then from that point going forward, you never know what could happen. Maybe they could win the whole thing. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What are your personal expectations for the Utah Jazz? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.